Today's vlog is a masterclass in political cowardice and intellectual dishonesty,
courtesy of Justin Trudeau.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie, and I tell you that when you are able to read through the linguistic dishonesty and the political bullcrap, it is quite literally like leaving the Matrix. Once you see it, you can never unsee it, and you can never get past how politicians try to pull the wool over your eyes
in real time.
And today's masterclass in political cowardice and intellectual dishonesty is coming to you from none other than Justin Trudeau. And for those of you who may not know, yesterday marked the 2-year anniversary of the downing of the Ukrainian Flight 752. From Wikipedia, Ukrainian International Airlines Flight 752 was a scheduled international flight from Tehran to Kiev, operated by Ukrainian International Airlines. On 8 January 2020, the Boeing 737-800 operating the route was shot down shortly after takeoff from Tehran Imam Khomeini International Airport by the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. All 176 passengers and crew were killed. Now, as you can probably imagine, and I am not trying to be glib here whatsoever, the deliberate downing of a passenger airline is kind of a big deal on an international scale, and this was kind of a big deal for Canada because 63 passengers on that plane were Canadian. Passengers and crew, people on board based on Ukrainian official list: Iran 82, Canada 63, Ukraine 11, Sweden 10, Afghanistan 7, United Kingdom 3. Total 176. This is kind of a big deal on the international scale when you have the deliberate downing of a passenger airline, although the claim was that they did not know it was a passenger airline when they deliberately downed it with 2 missiles. It's kind of a big deal on the international scale, kind of a big deal on the Canadian scale, given the number of Canadians who died on that flight, and kind of a bigger deal because just days later, you had Justin Trudeau literally shaking the hands of the Iranian foreign minister when people said maybe that wasn't a very good photo op. Trudeau criticized for shaking hands with Iranian foreign minister after deadly plane crash. By Amanda Connolly, Global News. We will come back to the substance of this article in greater detail a little later in this vlog, just to open a slight parenthesis here that everyone should appreciate that right now you have Global News, which if it is not bought and paid for by the government itself, it is at the very least highly subsidized by the government itself, referring to this as a plane crash and not what it actually was:
the deliberate downing of a passenger airline.
Words have meaning and abusing of words have consequences, but we will get back to that in a second. Just appreciate that before we move on. With that said, on January 8, 2022, the 2-year anniversary of the deliberate downing of this passenger airline, you have Justin Trudeau taking to Twitter to issue what can only be described as the most egregious, in-your-face, insulting, virtue signaling tweets. Statement by the Prime Minister: National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Air Disasters. Justin Trudeau, blue checkmark at Justin Trudeau. Too many Canadians have been affected by the devastating toll of aviation tragedies. And today we stand with the families and loved ones of those we've lost. We remember the victims and we recommit to improving the safety of air travel. Words have meaning, abuse of words have consequences, and here you have Justin Trudeau referring to this incident as a disaster as if he does not know what a disaster means. Definitions from Oxford Languages: disaster, noun, a sudden event such as an accident or a natural catastrophe that causes great damage or loss of life. Now, you may be able to find broader definitions of the term disaster somewhere out there on the internet that might make this less of a bastardization of the English language, but this is not just a bastardization of the English language. This is an insult to the victims and their families. Referring to the deliberate downing of a passenger airline that kills all 176 passengers and crew as a disaster might suggest to those who don't know better that it was an accident or force majeure, and whether or not Trudeau is doing it on purpose, the consequences are the same.
It is an absolute disgrace.
But Trudeau and his administration don't stop at minimizing this incident with one tweet alone. They go on. Justin Trudeau, blue checkmark at Justin Trudeau. The downing of Flight 752 was a national tragedy. On this 2nd anniversary, the families of the victims are hosting a virtual commemorative ceremony. Please join us here and pay your respect to those who lost their lives 2 years ago today. To which I responded as follows. Viva Frei at the Viva Frei. It was not a, quote, national tragedy, end quote, at Justin Trudeau. It was mass murder. Your inability to call it what it was is the national tragedy. And a little while later, just to rub a little more salt in the wounds of the victims, Mélanie Joly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, tweeted as follows. Mélanie Joly, blue checkmark at Mélanie Joly. Today, we remember those who lost their lives to aviation disasters, including those lost in the tragic downing of PS 752. My statement. Just take a moment for a second to appreciate how devastatingly degrading and insulting this messaging has to be for the families of those who died on that plane, that on the 2-year anniversary of the deliberate downing of that airplane, they cannot call it what it is, and to add insult to injury, they're lumping it together with aviation tragedies at large. And then when you read Mélanie Joly's statement itself, it becomes even more degrading. 2 years ago today, the Iranian military downed Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752, killing all 176 innocent lives on board, including 55 Canadians and many more with ties to Canada. This tragedy follows those of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 and Air India Flight 182, which together took almost 300 Canadian lives. Now, for those of you who may not know, the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 was not a deliberate incident. It was not an act of mass murder. It was a bona fide accident by all accounts, but it is being lumped together with this deliberate act as if the families of the people who were killed on the Ukrainian flight are not somehow going to take offense to being lumped together with accidents at large. Referring to the Ukrainian Flight 752 as an aviation disaster is like referring to 9/11 as a structural disaster. It is dishonest, it's disingenuous, it is political cowardice, and whether or not it's deliberate, the outcome is the same. It is disgraceful. And on page 2 of her statement, the government of Canada, together with its international partners, is determined, and I am determined, to holding Iran accountable for this terrible tragedy in accordance with international law, to doing our best to prevent future tragedies of this nature, to remembering and honoring your loved ones, and to supporting each of you and your families. To all the families who lost your loved ones on that fateful day, our government hears you and will continue to stand by you until you get the justice you deserve. Yeah, justice. The first step towards justice is calling this incident what it was
and not minimizing it as though it was an accident of some sort.
And I took to Twitter to say as much. Viva Frei at the Viva Frei. It was not, unquote, aviation disaster, end quote. Their lives were not, quote, lost, end quote. They were murdered. Their lives were taken. Why is it so hard for you and your government to acknowledge this at Mélanie Joly? You and Justin Trudeau are nothing shy of murderer apologists based on today's tweets. And then we get back to the article that I referenced at the beginning of this vlog. It's not only 2 days later that Justin Trudeau was being an apologist. 2 years later, he is still being that very same apologist. Trudeau criticized for shaking hands with Iranian foreign minister after deadly plane crash. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing criticism over new photographs showing him shaking hands of Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. The meeting on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference on Friday quickly sparked criticism online given that Iran shot down a passenger plane last month near Tehran, killing all 176 on board, including 57 Canadians. Since then, it has refused to hand over the black boxes recovered from the crash site. But yeah, it was a tragedy, Justin Trudeau, not an act of mass murder. Viva Frei at the Viva Frei, replying to at Justin Trudeau. A quote, tragedy, end quote, you pathetic coward, shot down by 2 missiles. Ukraine Flight 752 was outright murder, but you can't bring yourself to say it. You have no business being a quote leader, end quote. And on the 2-year anniversary of that act of mass murder, how does Justin Trudeau commemorate the victims, the people who died on that plane? He lumps them together with aviation accidents at large.
We remember the victims and we recommit to improving the safety of air travel.
2 years after having failed to provide any justice whatsoever, Justin Trudeau goes out and commits more injustice by desecrating the memory of those who died in that act of mass murder by lumping them together with aviation tragedies, aviation accidents in general. There can be no shame where there is no pride, and I've got to tell you, Justin Trudeau simply has no shame whatsoever. There are no depths to which he will not stoop in order to save political face, issue some vapid, virtue signaling tweets at the expense of the memories of those who died in that act. And that is it. Hopefully some of you out there found this enlightening, and if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of the support links are in the pinned comment. We've got some more great merch. Politics ruins everything. Robert Barnes and I do weekly streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. You can also find us and support us on Locals, where supporters get lots of exclusive content at
vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
My content is also on Rumble, which has recently merged with Locals, and you can find a direct link to our Locals community via that Rumbles page. I'll show you the graphic now. But more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. See ya.